I forced my screaming 2-year-old into his car seat, wedging my knee into his groin for leverage. My husband has to work this weekend, so it's just me and the terrorists on a 2-day journey from New York City to Freedom, Maine. My eldest, 13, is starring in his camp production of Little Shop of Horrors, and he's written us a passive-aggressive letter saying he knows we weren't planning on visiting this year, but wouldn't it be great if one of us could be there to see the show? You're insane, said my husband. How are you going to drive 12 hours by yourself with a 2-year-old? Easy, I say. I remind him that I once spent several weeks packed cheek to jowl with Afghan soldiers in the back of an open truck as snow and Soviet bombs fell from the sky. That I found my way in and out of the jungles of Zimbabwe alone and without compass or vehicle. That I drove across the continent of Europe in a 20-year-old jalopy with my psychopathic Romanian boyfriend after we'd broken up. How hard could it be to drive a toddler to freedom? Quackers! 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 Screams Leo, with the same intensity as someone having his nails extracted with pliers. I'm prepared for this moment. I've worked my whole life for this moment. From a shopping bag, I pull out a gigantic box of Pepperidge Farm goldfish crackers, bigger than the kid himself. Is your mommy great or what? I say. Then silence, glorious silence, fills the car. When people ask, as they inevitably do, what on earth we were thinking when we decided to have baby Leo 9 and 11 years after his older siblings, we tailored the answer to our audience. To our friends dealing with infertility, we shrug our shoulders and change the subject. The childless by choice get the whole, he was an accident. Our parents think he was planned. Our big kids think we had him to avoid getting a dog. It's not that we get off on lying, it's just that the real story is a little embarrassing. Birth control and I have a rocky history. I got pregnant at 17 using a diaphragm. I got pregnant in my 30s using an IUD. Then a third breast started sprouting under my right armpit. I am not joking, this really happened. And my last line of defense, the birth control pill, was taken off my list of hormonally acceptable medications. I broached the idea of a vasectomy with Paul, who's standing right here. And he started ranting about Hitler. What about our third kid, he said, even though we planned to just have 2. We have to replace the Jews lost in the Holocaust. That's ridiculous, I said. I'm not having a third kid to spite Hitler. It's not about Hitler, he said. It's about the dead Jews. Well, I'm not having a third kid for the dead Jews either, I said. This debate went on for years, 8 long years, until finally, when I was 39, Paul came home from a business trip to LA, woke me up from a deep slumber, and made such a passionate plea for a third child, I calculated where I was in my cycle, safe, I was certain, and kept the diaphragm in the drawer. Let him have this one night of false hope, I thought. We'll have a rational discussion about it in the morning. 9 months later, despite assiduous use of the diaphragm during the rest of that month, Leo was born. Uh-oh, I hear from the back seat, followed by another fingernails extracted with pliers wail, then, quackers, quackers, quackers! I look into the rearview mirror to assess the damage. My son is holding the gigantic Pepperidge Farm goldfish cracker box upside down, peering into the void for the goldfish that are now dumped all over the floor of the back seat. He starts to scream and thrash, causing his blankie to fall out of his car seat as well. I pull over to the shoulder once again and put on my hazard lights. About halfway into our journey in the little car of horrors, I'm reduced to playing the Herman's Hermit song, I Am Henry VIII I Am, on automatic repeat for 4 hours, just to placate the terrors. Again, again, shouts Leo when I try to vary the musical fare, and it becomes a philosophical question of the lesser of 2 evils. Which is worse? A child's ear-splitting screams, or second verse, same as the first, I am Henry VIII I am. I'm not saying I chose the right answer. The following afternoon, we finally arrive in Freedom, which at this point feels like just another word for nothing left to lose. Though it's taken us a few extra hours due to multiple stops along the shoulder of I-95 to retrieve blankie, or a fallen cookie, or to mop up apple juice from Leo's lap, we still have plenty of time to spare before the show begins. So after hugging my big kids, I immediately set out to find a place for Leo to nap so he won't cause a ruckus during the performance. We decide to use my daughter Sasha's bed in her cabin, but just as the baby is drifting off to sleep, Sasha's counselor walks over to talk to us. "I'm sorry," she says. "He can't sleep here. It wouldn't be fair to the rest of the girls. They might get homesick." Homesick? I have no idea what this means, but I explained to the 19-year-old that I've been traveling for 2 days just to see my son's performance, that the baby needs a place to sleep or I won't actually get to see the performance. "You could go find a nice shady place under a tree or something," she says. I silently, uncharitably curse her future motherhood. "That only happens in paintings," I say. 2-year-olds don't actually fall asleep under trees in real life. You sure I can't just let him sleep here?" "I'm sure," she says. So I wake up my toddler and convince the camp nurse to allow Leo to fall asleep in one of her sick beds. So what if the last kid in it had strep and he takes a full 2-hour nap? The musical is scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. Sasha, Leo, and I arrive 15 minutes early to stake out our spot. Other parents of young thespians start arriving in the barn too, and we smile at one another and nod knowingly. "Long trip," our faces in rumpled clothes say, but it was worth it. The lights dim. My daughter grabs my hand. My 2-year-old settles in my lap, sitting perfectly still. My teenage son steps out onto the stage, owning it. And then, suddenly, Leo breaks the fourth wall. "Jacob! Jacob! Hi! Hi, Jacob!" he starts to shout, standing up in my lap and waving maniacally to his big brother on stage. Jacob tries to ignore him, but it's hard. The audience twitters. The other parents, some of whom have driven longer distances than I, shoot me irritated sneers. Jacob himself shoots me a pleading look. "Control him, Mom." "Jacob! Jacob, hi!" Leo yells again, his tone now desperate. My path to the door, which had been clear before the campers descended upon the barn, is now completely blocked. "Jacob! Jacob, hi!" I try reasoning with my 2-year-old. When that doesn't work, I resort to threats. "Be quiet," I whisper, "or you won't get any ice cream after the show." "Ice cream? Ice cream?" Leo shouts. "Outside! Outside now! Hi, Jacob! Hi!" He's still trying to catch his brother's eye. "Jacob! Hi!" The other parents in the room now clearly hate me. They glare at me and roll their collective eyes. What business does she have bringing a 2-year-old to a performance, the purse mouths ask. What's wrong with her? What was she thinking? "It's Hitler's fault," I want to shout, but instead I simply stand up and drag my kicking, screaming replacement Jew through the red sea of young campers, stepping on fingers, toes, the occasional water bottle and flashlight until I reach the door of the barn, and when I get there, I realize I've left the diaper bag back at my seat. Leo, now sprung from the hot and stuffy barn, dips his blankie into mud puddles. I try to stand at the door of the barn, half in, half out, so I can keep an eye on both kids, but I soon realize this is impossible. Just as I turn my back on the baby to hear Jacob belt out, "Suddenly Seymour!" Leo falls into a puddle, chest first, and starts to bawl. The kid is completely caked in mud from his hair down to his sneakers, and I definitely smell something malodorous in his diaper, but what really bothers Leo is that his blankie is now soaked. So he runs over and hugs me for comfort instead, and soon I'm covered in mud too, and the audience starts to clap, and the play is over. It's over. I feel like crying. I feel like screaming. I feel like throwing myself on the ground and having a 2-year-old tantrum myself.